mentioned, we did a presentation similar to this one, vocabulary instruction for ESL students. It was a little bit more hands-on, but for you guys, we just want to give you some ideas on different ways of doing instruction for specifically for ESL. So, as I mentioned before, I'm Nick Santola. I mostly teach high school science and engineering, but I did in the past teach ESL. So I have a little bit of experience with that. So the objectives for today are to teach some techniques in order to effectively teach vocabulary to our students. For this, using a 6-step process based on Marzano's rules and through direct and indirect instruction. And most of all, trying to make class fun. As Michelle said, if the kids are engaged and they're having fun, they're going to learn more. So doing activities that increase and make them excited will increase the knowledge of the class. So why are we doing this? Because vocabulary is an important part of showing your understanding, right? If you want to prove that you know something, how do you do it? You do it through the vocabulary that you have, right? As this really smart person said, vocabulary is a single indicator of intellectual ability and an accurate predictor of success at school, right? Your ability to interpret what you read and to express how you understand something shows your ability in academics, right? So how do we do this? We use the 6 steps. And what I've done is I've taken Marzano's principles and shown how I would do each particular step. So I'll go through those steps here. The first one is the initial delivery of the vocabulary. You could do that 2 different ways. You could do it by direct instruction, which would be, as most of us know, standing in front of the class, delivering the material, maybe going line by line, telling them what they should know about the particular vocabulary words. You can also do it indirectly. I like to do it this way sometimes, where maybe I will give a video, and in that video there's particular vocabulary words that I want them to identify, right? So maybe afterwards there's a quiz or some other material where they need to identify these words. There's also different reading they could do which will have the vocabulary in it, and they'll need to maybe go through, underline, and identify for using context clues. So, number 2 is to restate. It's important not only to memorize definitions. I know in my class it's often a challenge to get students to put things in their own words. Most of the times they can easily memorize what the definition of photosynthesis is, but they can't tell me what it is. They just know the definition out of the book. So getting them to restate or to say it in their own words is a challenge. So how do we do that? I do it in 3 different ways. I actually stole some of these from Michelle, but I use foldables, which I'll show you in the next one, and the Foursquare, and then a vocabulary notebook. So what are foldables over here? You can see foldables. For this one's taxonomy. I teach science, so taxonomy, and then underneath each one of these little things will be a definition, maybe pictures, something describing what these particular categories are. You can do these with any subject. I know that Michelle uses them in math. You can have them pasted in the notebook along with the notes, so it doesn't have to be a separate assignment. And believe it or not, it works in all levels. So I found in middle school and high school as well. Giving the kids some way of expressing themselves. Sometimes they'll get really excited to do these particular things, make them way more elaborate than I expected, and take up a lot more time. Another way is doing definitions, and with this, they can put pictures, different synonyms, different ways of expressing their understanding of the particular vocabulary. In my upper level classes, I like to do this one, just a vocabulary list. Every student in my class has a different level of English, right? So making them own their learning by putting and making their own vocabulary list, I found is important. I'll even take some words in my biology class, which is 9th grade. It's kind of a mix. I'll pick random words that may not necessarily be from the unit, but something I know most of the class doesn't know. And I'll tell them to put it in their vocabulary notebooks, and it may be one of the bonus questions or something extra in the class that we discuss. So just another way to increase overall vocabulary for the students. So number 3, still initial understanding, but we can do it visually, right? So maybe we can get the students to draw pictures through non-linguistic representations, making cartoons, and magazines or mnemonic devices. So making art, I have some examples of these as well. So I like to make them make cartoons. For biology in particular, there's a lot of things that happen in events, and there's lots of vocabulary words that go through these, and making a story or cartoon that displays what's happening in that particular event, I've found is very important. Making mnemonic devices also helps them. I don't know how many times I've heard my students in the physics class say, "Do you know what PEMDAS is?" And they got PEMDAS because Miss Michelle has this posted all over her classroom. Right?
One of my students came up with the best one this year, because I make them come up with their own, is "Please end my day at school."
Nice. Nice. I do the same thing for the measurements as well, and I always make a competition. So, what is it? I can't think of it off the top of my head, but they'll do the different measurements, and then we'll have a little competition for a bonus point to see whose is the funniest or most clever. Yeah. Making art, different projects, works pretty well for the middle school or younger kids. And just regular drawings. Sometimes if there's a particular thing, making something that is similar or related to that image. So, creating multiple exposures. If we just teach the kids in one way or just have them discover it in one place, they're not going to commit that to memory. It's not going to be something they're going to use. So you want to continue having them see this throughout the week, throughout your course or your lesson. So I like to do acting out stories. Like I said before, a lot of biology or physics, there's a series of events that happen or things that take place, so they can create different stories or interact with each other. I like to do one with photosynthesis where there's only not many science teachers in here, but there's two different photosystems and each one's a party, and then the electrons get excited and they all write a story, and then they come up to the front and they act it out. And then later on the test, when I ask them to describe photosystem 1, they'll say, "It's like the party that Mr. Santola made us all go to," right? So it's just a way of getting them to think outside the box. And so I also like to do prefixes and suffixes. For biology, it's particularly important. For chemistry or physics, all of the prefixes and suffixes, if you learn them throughout time, makes it easier for them to understand words, so they can discover. By the end of the biology class, I will say, what is this? Can you discover what this is? They'll look at it and they'll say, it ends in A's, so it's an enzyme, right? Different things like this. And I particularly like to avoid using translations. I know a lot of teachers will maybe say, look it up in the dictionary, or have a friend write what it is in either Korean or Japanese or Chinese. But for me, I prefer to avoid doing translations, because then they're often relying on translating it. So when they're trying to explain something to you, they will think in their own native language and then have to translate it into English. And then a lot of times when they write it down, it doesn't make any sense. So if they learn it first in English, it will be committed in English first, and when they think about that topic, that's how it will come out. It's a lot more difficult for the students, but in the end, I think it's more rewarding. So just a picture of students acting it out, and then an example of how I would use the different roots, prefixes and suffixes. So creating multiple exposures. Doing group work, allowing students to share how they interpret the understanding of this, right? So think, pair, share, discussing. Sometimes I'll have little mini competitions between a group. So maybe each group will do a drawing or a cartoon, and then we'll have them discuss and share what their meaning is and how they are, and then have a little mini competition to see whose is the best. You can do this as a group or as a class. Right? Maybe set different groups in the class. They'll each compete against each other, or each individual will have their own, and then we do little games. Right? So the last one, way too fast. I had a lot of I had a lot of coffee today and not enough sleep. So The last thing and the most exciting part is games, right? After you have taught the kids, you've had them discover the words, they have it in their notebook, they can understand what they're doing. Now we want them to show off, show me what you know. So I like to do this through different types of games. There's many different games I play. I used to do Jeopardy a lot. Vocabulary words will work in teams. Play a simple Jeopardy game. They really get excited to do this. You can offer a bonus point. I've actually stopped doing that. The kids just love doing it anyways. They're excited. You can hear them yelling down the hall. Different charades. Michelle's son the other day actually was up in the class drawing pictures of different parts of the cell, and the students were trying to figure out what he was drawing. It was just a lot of fun, a way to end the class. You have an extra 10 minutes. You can say, hey, come up front, draw a word, and then you do that. I do bingo as well, so you put the words, but instead of only putting the words down and then if you get the definition correct, you get the point or the bingo, I also make them repeat it. So if you get 5 in a row, you also need to tell me what each word means again. So it's showing me that they understand, not just maybe looking at their friend that crossed out photosynthesis and doing like that, checking again. One that I've kind of made up in my class is Trashketball. So it's a fun little game. We have a 3D printer, so I printed a little basketball hoop, put it on the board, and I will write a word on the board, and students will have to give me the definition of it. If they get the definition of it, then I will really just take a piece of paper because I don't have any plastic balls, and the students will come up and they'll shoot. If they make it, they get a point for their team. They get really excited to try to do it. Sometimes I'll increase it by making different points for how far, and then they'll compete to see who can get the most points. And I just tell them all the time, like, you got 5 points, that's great. And they'll say, Mr. Santola, what's 5 points for? I was like, it means you're awesome. There's no points, it's just for fun. I want to know that, I don't need to give you bonus points for doing something. We're just having fun using the vocabulary that we need to know, right? The last one, and a new one that I've been using, I think maybe some of you have used it before, is Kahoots. And to end this, I actually have created a little Kahoots for us to play together. Ooh. So if you have your phone, go to the website kahoot.it. It's right here. Go to kahoot.it and I'll give you a code so you can play in. If you want to just work with the person next to you, it's fine. I have it set up now to where it's a group. So we have like teams. And here's the code if you're already logged in. For my class, I like to do it in groups and as maybe a review at the end of the day. Other teachers will use it as a quiz, so everybody will log in with their own device, but I don't want to require everybody to have a device, so for me, either working in pairs or as a group. No naughty nicknames over there. All right, so we can see now we have the different groups that are logging in. The students like to get pretty animated with their names. In last class it was like, I love Billy, or I love so-and-so. Team Clark. So maybe we'll let a couple more log in and then. Good?
No, we're on a different team. Capital blah blah.
All right, let's see. I've created some really brain buster questions, so hopefully you guys are paying attention during the presentation. I hope so, because you guys are going to get lots of points if you win. Yeah, lots of points. Good, we have 10 teams now. I think that's good. Is anybody else trying to log in?
Up front, our network is slow, so we may experience delays. If we
Right,
don't win,
right.
that's probably what it was.
Obviously.
Got only 9 now. Somebody's like already given up.
They're abandoning. All right, let's go ahead and start.
I'm ready. 2, 1.
There should be. And it plays really nice music to get the kids amped up and excited to play. So how many steps were used in the vocabulary instruction? You click the color on your screen. You can see here the different choices. And then we can see 8 out of 9 got it correct. So we have one little deficiency. No problem. Maybe it was an accident, right? We can look at it and see maybe there's an issue. Sometimes I'm surprised when students get something right because I thought they really understood it. So then the next day maybe I can go back and check and make sure, right? It will give you a nice little point list, and depending on how fast you answer, you get a little bit more points. So, you ready?
Michelle, so we're higher than you?
So, you can also
It's not a Wi-Fi problem, by the way.
you can add in pictures as well. So,
We still don't even have answers.
so is this a picture of a monkey, a sloth, George, or a rabbit?
George.
Very close resemblance to George, but it's actually a sloth, right?
How am I still in 5th place? I'm in 9th place.
All right, Jinju campus in the lead, 20, not far behind, NISS-Asia.
Coming up strong is blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 pulling in the rear, but we still have plenty of questions. Don't worry, there's plenty more points to be had. Ooh. Nice. Solid response. Foldables. One little deficient. We'll just pretend like everybody got that one right. All right. Jinju campus in the lead. Good job.
We're cousins. Team. At the end, we got to add ours together.
Nice. And here we have one person who maybe they clicked the wrong answer. I'm sure they knew what it was. But if we want to review it, say maybe there's a problem, we can click back. We can talk about it. This is direct instruction. They're explaining what's happening, right? Ooh, Dougie. Not only the first competition you've won today. All right. Do you need to use all of these methods?
Wait.
It's 50% chance, guys. Somebody fell asleep. You don't have to use all of these methods, guys. You can use a combination of what works for you, right? Obviously, you don't need to make foldables, then cartoons, and then play Kahoots, and then... All right. So let's go. All in one day. You have 45 minutes, so you need to get started. All right. So at the end, we can look and see who wins. You can actually turn it off so you can't see the responses if you want to use it as a real test or something. All right, we see Doug.
I'm sure this has nothing to do with the fact that you guys have been sitting next to one another all day. Oh, no.
Doug just happens to be a valuable contender. All right, let's get back. So that's all I have. I know it's a little bit fast, but hopefully maybe you gained a couple new techniques or at least a game or something you can use in the class. Any questions?
We want to ask about your
I don't use it so
management
often,
policy
but
with
when
using
you prepare for
second
tests,
or
or
their
teach
native
history,
class.
so there's a lot of
I
like,
tend to tell teachers not
people
to
names
go
like
hardcore
presidents
about
or wars or
not explicitly saying don't
you
speak
can
in
add
class.
pictures.
I try to start by
I
saying
use like art.
we want you to speak English
Teach.
instead of punitively saying go speak Korean.
Pictures,
or
photographs.
Have you found any
Say like, oh, which
pros or
war
cons
is
to that, or
this?
should we
World War
be a
II?
whole lot more?
And it's hard to have
Stop
31 students.
I don't know if I'd want to be really strict because sometimes you need to give a little bit of leeway for certain students.
Especially with older students.
Right. If they're responsible enough and they're using it appropriately, yeah. Well, one way that one of our former principals told me is to ask, how would you say that in English? And instead of saying speak English, please tell me what you said in English, so we can. If I tell them also, if you're speaking in Korean or your own language, I don't know what you're saying, so I don't know if it's correct. I don't know how to help you. So that's one way I also maybe try to trick them into speaking English. You know, encourage it. I really discourage speaking the native language, but I don't force it, or there's no penalties necessarily. Yeah. Any other questions? Thanks, Wendy.
No, actually, I just wanted to comment on what he said, that in elementary we make a big deal about framing our rules in a positive way. We don't say don't hit. We say keep your hands to yourself. We don't say don't do something, because then the thing that you're not supposed to do is in their mind. So if you're always saying don't speak Korean, it's Korean, Korean, Korean. Whereas if you say speak English, it's English, English, English. So it is a more positive way to frame it, I think. And we work hard in elementary to do that too, and it's a challenge.
Thank you, guys.